Wisconsin Eye's 2014 election coverage is brought to you by the Wisconsin Hospital Association. For over 90 years, a valued voice for Wisconsin hospitals, supporting high-quality, high-value care in communities like yours.
Wisconsin Eye is in Eau Claire on the campus of Chippewa Valley Technical College, and we are interviewing Mr. Phil Swanhorst of Chippewa Falls. He's a Democrat running in the 23rd Senate District. Phil, thanks for talking to Wisconsin Eye.
Thank you.
And a programming note, Wisconsin Eye appreciates the support of the Wisconsin Hospital Association, which represents more than 139 hospitals and health systems, for making these candidate interviews possible. First-time candidate, Mr. Swanhorst?
Yes, it is.
Give us then your short bio, sir.
Sure, I'll be glad to do that. Thanks. I was born and raised in a farm in South Dakota, and after about 20 years, I moved into Minnesota, the Twin Cities area, held several different positions in private industry, manufacturing jobs, both union and non-union jobs. I was in management, I was in labor. And then one of my best friends, I met his sister 32 years ago, and she's been my wife for these last 32 years.
Okay.
And we've lived here in the Chippewa Valley for a couple dozen years. We've owned and operated the Pine Harbor Campground out by Lake Wissota for the last 22 years. And I got my first public sector job 13 years ago driving a bus here in the city of Eau Claire.
City of Eau Claire.
Yep.
Well, is there any one issue or one set of issues that made you decide to run for the run this year, Mr. Swanhorst?
I guess the issues I've been focusing on, and we could talk eons and eons on particular issues, but my philosophy is I've been on this good earth for 6 decades, and what I've gotten in those years in my lifetime was provided by the hard work of previous generations. And I feel it's my turn to try to point in the right direction to provide a good future for the generations that follow me.
Well, it's been a very interesting 4 years in the Capitol. Yeah. Have there been some major policy decisions made that you don't agree with?
Well, of course, the Act 10, the bomb dropping, happened shortly after Governor Walker took office. I didn't totally agree, of course, with the way that was implemented. It was very traumatic to a lot of people. It affected a lot of lives. I know a lot of personal individuals who have lost significant amounts of their livelihood because of that. And to me, the worst thing that occurred is the loss of communication. As we move forward and want to make improvements to our state and or our country, we have to learn to communicate. And depriving all public sector workers the right to collectively bargain does not point us in the right direction of trying to better communicate with one another. We must learn to communicate, not terminate communication.
If you're in the Senate next session, would you try to repeal Act 10, Mr. Swanhorst?
I don't think it would be realistic to repeal the entire Act 10 piece of legislation, okay, but I definitely would address the re-implementation of collective bargaining.
Okay. Let's talk about a big part of the next state budget, and that's going to be how much goes for schools. If you're in the Senate, what's going to be your priorities when the next school's budget is debated, sir?
Okay, the school funding is sadly been dramatically reduced during these last 4 years. We could almost live with the reduction in funding because of what Act 10 took away from the people that work in our educational system. But now what's occurring that I certainly do not agree with is our money is being funneled away from public schools and focused towards private, for-profit, and voucher schools. I don't think that money that taxpayers pay for public education should be going towards public or private schooling.
Would you keep that program going in the city of Milwaukee, which has had it for more than 25 years, sir?
Where it's been successful, I would let it continue. However, the going statewide with it, I do not agree with that.
Okay. Governor Walker this summer called for Wisconsin to withdraw from the Common Core standards. Right. Your position on that, sir?
The Common Core standards, as my understanding, was a bipartisan method of measuring the success of our educational system. It's taken a few years to learn how to use that system, and we're just getting to the point of realizing the measurements that it's giving us. And I don't think it's time to rewrite how Common Core standards are done. So no, I would not get rid of them at this time.
Nothing has exploded more in western Wisconsin than frac sand mining. There's a debate in the Capitol, should state government enact some minimal standards and local governments couldn't go beyond that, or is it purely a local government issue, sir?
I am a firm believer in decentralization of authority in private sector enterprises and definitely in government. So I think you know where my answer is going. We should not let people 100+ miles away determine how a mine is done in Chippewa County, Clark County, Eau Claire County. Let the people who live with the mines in their back door decide how those mines are going to operate, not someone 100 miles away.
As you talk to voters in the 23rd Senate District, do they generally say that those frac sand mines are pretty good neighbors, or do they have some problems?
There's, of course, the problems of the trucks hurting the roads, the dust. You're going to get that with mines, and we could address those issues if we were allowed to do so locally and determine when they can operate, how they operate. But again, our authority has been centralized into Madison, where our local authorities can't make those decisions on how those mines are operated.
Another mining-related question. Are you getting asked how you feel about the proposed Gogebic mine in Ashland and Iron County? Has that come up?
Oh, absolutely.
Your position?
I'm not for the way it's initially been presented by an outstate entity coming into Wisconsin in our great Northwoods and wanting an open pit mine without absolute positive assurances of what the conclusion of that mine will be, and that is the total restoration of our great northern woods. That issue has not been settled in my mind.
Transportation funding. There's an estimate that the transportation fund in the next 2 years could be $600–700 million short. If there's a gap, a budget deficit, how would you fill it, sir?
That's a great question, and you're asking a bus driver how we should fill transportation funding. I would like to see more money directed, of course, towards more than just roads.
Okay.
There's ferries, there's rail, there's bus systems in most of our cities in this state. The way to provide funding for transportation, I firmly believe, is to start accepting money that we have paid to the federal government and they want to help us out. And I refer to the $810 million that we refused for rail. Okay. If I could just elaborate a bit on that.
Go ahead.
The logic of refusing that money was the next year, why, we can't maintain it. Even if the federal government 100% paid for that 90-mile stretch of rail. I ask you, Dwight Eisenhower, a Republican president, proposed our interstate system. It was not efficient for 10 to 20 years, but thank God he had the foresight to say the future generations need an interstate system. I think we need to stand up and have the foresight to say future generations need rail as an option to simply only and just road transportation.
Would you consider raising either the gas tax on the gas tax or the $75 that you and I pay to register a vehicle?
I would not take any raising of taxes off the table. Okay. I'm not going to initially say, yes, let's raise taxes, but everything can be discussed.
Health care. Medicaid provides health care for one. Medicaid provides health care for 1 in 5 Wisconsin residents. Mm-hmm. The American Hospital Association says our Medicaid reimbursement rates are second lowest in the nation. Should they be increased, Mr. Swanhorst?
Oh, absolutely. Absolutely. And the main reason is not just to help the Medicaid people get their fair share of funding from the federal government, but someone's paying for that, and it's the people that have insurance now, whether it's provided by their employer or it's self-provided. They're paying for that health care one way or the other. Hospitals aren't going out of business. They're just charging people more that shouldn't be charged that much.
We discussed the potential deficit in the transportation fund, but this week there was a report saying that there could be a deficit in the next 2-year budget of more than $1 billion. If there is a rather large deficit, how would you fix it, sir?
Well, I'd stop giving tax breaks, number one, to the wealthiest among us. And number two, the best way to raise and generate funds for our state government is through the creation of livable wage jobs. Now, I say livable wage jobs for a reason. The creation of minimum wage jobs does not generate enough tax money to make a significant difference in our state budget. But I firmly believe that if we significantly increase our job base, we can address our budget situation.
Would you take our minimum wage beyond the 1010 that's the subject of some bills in the Capitol? Should it be higher than that?
I am a firm believer in raising the minimum wage. However, I am also a firm believer that on the campaign trail, I am not going to draw a line in the sand and go to Madison and demand that I never cross that line either forward or backward. I will not be opposed to $10.10, but I also will do what a paid legislator is supposed to do, and that's go to Madison, negotiate, compromise, and legislate. I'm not going to demand one absolute figure on the campaign trail and never back away from it. That's why we have so much inaction, not only in Madison, but if I may say in Washington, D.C. We've drawn too many lines in the sand. It's time to focus on the ideas and focus on how we accomplish making things better, such as increasing the minimum wage.
The bill to legalize medical marijuana will be reintroduced next year. Now the states of Washington and Colorado have legalized recreational marijuana. Your position on those issues?
I am not in favor of legalizing recreational marijuana at this time, simply because of the legalities of everything else around enforcing if someone's intoxicated by marijuana when they're driving a vehicle. I would be in favor of very strict regulated medical use of marijuana, but that's as far as I'd go at this time.
First offense, drunken driving. Should it be a crime, Mr. Swanhorst?
Yes, it should.
Why?
It's inexcusable to get yourself in that position. I'm 60 years old. I'm a bus driver. I have a Class A CDL. That means I would never consider getting behind the wheel of any vehicle, and that has been my philosophy since day one from South Dakota. It's just not right.
We've talked about a number of issues. Is there any other issue that's key to your campaign that I haven't asked you about that you want to bring out, sir? Anything I've forgotten?
Women's rights has always been a personal issue for me.
Okay.
It's one we've kicked down the road, not for too many years, but for too doggone many decades as far as I'm concerned. We really got to get serious about addressing women's rights, expanding women's rights, and some of the legislation that's been introduced recently in Madison has not only not gone forward, it's gone backwards. So we really got to address women's rights in a dignified manner in the future.
Give me one example of a bill that hurt women's rights.
Well, I'm sure you know which one I'm talking about, that was introduced in the Senate to intrude a woman's body against her will when she goes to a doctor to attain a allowable medical procedure. Okay. That just should not have been allowed. Absolutely not.
Okay. Finally, I want to give you a chance to highlight differences between you and your opponent on November 4, sir.
I guess the main reason is I would like people to support me, as I feel there's a better direction we can go. Simply shrinking government and cutting taxes is not going to solve our problems. We have to think positively about how we can achieve a better future for the next generation. And I really feel if we prioritize where we want to go, we will make our lives today better for it, because we got to become better today to make it better for tomorrow.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Phil Swanhorst of Chippewa Falls is a Democrat. He's a Democratic candidate in the 23rd Senate District. Mr. Swanhorst, thanks for talking to Wisconsin Eye.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.